The Sterling Innovations annual gala was a spectacle of wealth and power. It was held in the Grand Ballroom, a place designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers, hundreds of them, hung from the high ceiling. They cast a shimmering light over everything. The air buzzed with sound, polite laughter, the soft clinking of expensive glasses, and the low hum of hundreds of conversations. Everyone who mattered, or thought they mattered, was here. Executives wore custom-made suits, dark and sleek. Their wives and partners wore flowing gowns, sparkling with jewels. They moved like colorful, graceful birds among the white marble pillars and velvet ropes. This was a night for celebration. Another year, another pile of money made by Sterling Innovations. But tonight, beneath the surface of all this glitter, a different kind of story was about to begin. It would be a story that few would ever forget. It would change the way many of them saw the world. Julian Vance was the man everyone watched. He was the CEO of Sterling Innovations. He stood tall and confident, a mountain of ambition and success. His suits were always perfect, his hair always neatly combed back. He held a champagne flute in his hand, its crystal sparkling under the lights. A small, confident smirk played on his lips. He looked around the room, taking in his empire. He spoke in a loud, booming voice that carried over the other sounds. He loved to be the center of attention. He loved to make sure everyone knew who was in charge. His every joke was met with eager laughs from his closest advisors. Their faces showed a clear desire to please him. They hung on his every word, hoping to catch a piece of his glory. Suddenly, a strange hush fell over Julian's group. It was like a wave passing through them. Julian's eyes had narrowed, fixed on something far away from his inner circle. People turned their heads, following his gaze. Their eyes stopped on Anya Petrova. She was a janitor. She was one of the many unseen workers who kept Sterling Innovations running. Most days, she was a quiet shadow, almost invisible in the busy hallways. Tonight, she wore her simple, practical uniform. It was gray and functional, a sharp contrast to the fancy dresses around her. She pushed a cleaning cart. It was a sturdy metal cart with various bottles and tools. She moved through a less crowded part of the ballroom. She was doing her job, making sure the gleaming marble floors stayed perfect, even with the hundreds of guests walking on them. Anya was in her mid-40s. Her face showed the marks of a life spent in hard work. There were small lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hands were strong and calloused from years of cleaning. But they moved with a surprising grace. She wiped a small spill from a low cocktail table. It was done with practiced ease. She kept her eyes down, focused on her task. She knew about the grandeur of the place, but she didn't let it distract her. She understood her place. She was an observer, not a participant, in these big, glittering parties. She cleaned up after them. That was her role. Julian's voice, which usually boomed, dropped to a chillingly quiet tone. Yet, it still cut through the sudden silence like a knife. Well, what do we have here?" he said. His words dripped with a mocking amusement. It was the kind of tone that made people uncomfortable. A few people exchanged nervous glances. They knew this tone. It often meant Julian was about to show his power. And it usually meant someone else would be shamed. The festive mood in the room began to sour. A silent, growing sense of dread spread among the guests closest to Julian. They shuffled their feet, hoping to blend into the crowd. Anya paused her work. Her back was still to Julian. She didn't need to turn around to know she was the target of his attention. A familiar tightness formed in her stomach. Most days, she felt like a ghost, completely unnoticed. She preferred it that way. But when Julian Vance noticed you, it was almost never for a good reason. She took a quiet breath, her grip tightening on the cleaning cloth she held. She braced herself for what was coming. Julian took a slow sip of his champagne. He drew out the moment, making everyone wait. Then, he began to walk towards her. His polished black shoes made a soft clicking sound on the marble floor. The crowd around him parted. They moved away from him as if pulled by an invisible force. It left a clear path between him and Anya. Anya still had her back to him, her shoulders tense. She could feel the sudden weight of hundreds of eyes on her. She was no longer invisible. The lively jazz music, which had been playing just moments before, now seemed to fade into nothing. All she could hear was the frantic thump of her own heart. "Petrova," Julian said, his voice closer now, sharper. Anya slowly turned. Her face was carefully blank, showing no emotion. Her eyes, a deep, warm brown, met his. There was a quiet strength in them, a deep well of resilience. But Julian, in his blindness and arrogance, completely missed it. He saw only a lowly employee. He saw a convenient pawn for his nightly entertainment. He saw someone he could easily control, someone who would break. He saw a canvas on which to paint his power. "I hear," Julian continued, his voice rising again. It drew the attention of even more guests from across the ballroom. "That you had a little incident yesterday afternoon." He paused, letting his words hang in the air for dramatic effect. A few people gasped softly. A vague rumor of a small cleaning mishap had been whispered earlier. A minor coffee spill in a less important hallway. It had been cleaned up quickly. It was barely worth mentioning. But in Julian's hands, it was quickly becoming something much bigger. It was becoming a weapon. Anya remained silent. Her gaze did not waver from Julian's face. She knew exactly what he meant. A coffee cart, pushed by a new delivery boy, had tipped slightly. Only a few drops of coffee had landed on the polished floor. She had cleaned it up herself, immediately and thoroughly. There was no fuss, no mess left behind. It was a non-issue, a tiny accident in a giant building. Yet, Julian was clearly preparing to turn it into a major problem for her. He was building his case. "A stain," Julian announced, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, high-ceilinged room. He spoke as if it were a major crime. "On our pristine image, on our company's reputation for perfection." He waved his hand grandly around the flawless ballroom. His gesture took in the gleaming floors and sparkling surfaces. "And while I admire your dedication to cleaning it up, Petrova," he said, his tone mocking, "I believe a public apology is in order." A grand gesture. A heavy tension filled the air. Guests looked at each other, uncomfortable. They all understood what was happening. This was a power play, a public shaming. It was designed to remind everyone of Julian's complete and total authority. It was cruel. It was unnecessary. And it was exactly like Julian Vance. A few people felt a pang of pity for Anya, but no one dared to step forward. No one dared to speak. Their own careers, their own positions, depended on staying in Julian's good graces. Their silence was a heavy shroud over the room. Julian lowered his voice again, leaning in slightly. A cold, predatory glint was in his eyes. He raised his champagne flute, taking another slow sip. He savored the moment. "However," he said, drawing out the word, making everyone lean in, "I am a benevolent man, Petrova. I believe in second chances, even for the smallest of transgressions." His gaze swept over the silent, captivated audience. He enjoyed their uneasy anticipation. He was a conductor, and they were his orchestra. He held every single note in his hands. "So," Julian announced, his voice gaining power once more. He made a dramatic gesture with his free hand. "I will offer you a deal." He took another step closer to Anya. He was almost within arm's reach now. Anya stood her ground. Her face was still unreadable. The only sign of her inner struggle was a tiny, almost invisible tremor in her hands. She kept them clasped behind her back. Julian gestured towards the large, empty center of the dance floor. The band had fallen silent. A single spotlight, as if by magic, found its way to the empty space. It created a bright circle on the polished wood. Dance, Petrova, he commanded, a cruel smile stretching across his face. Dance in front of everyone here. Show us your spirit. Entertain us. And, he added, his voice dripping with false generosity, I'll consider your debt to Sterling Innovations completely paid. I'll forgive you. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. It was a sudden, sharp sound. A nervous cough broke the silence, quickly hushed by a disapproving glare. Humiliation. That was what he was asking for. Public, deep, gut-wrenching humiliation. Anya, a quiet, unassuming janitor, forced to dance for the amusement of her rich employer and his powerful guests. It was an unthinkable request. It was a monstrous demand. The air in the ballroom crackled with silent outrage. Yet, still, no one dared to speak. No one dared to challenge Julian. Julian's eyes gleamed with triumph. He had her. He had cornered her. What choice did she have? Refusal would surely mean she would be fired. Perhaps even a public reprimand that would make it impossible for her to find another job. Acceptance meant enduring the ultimate degradation. Either way, he won. He had proven his point. He was untouchable. His power was absolute. He could do whatever he wanted. Anya's quiet eyes finally flickered. They did not go to Julian. Instead, they moved across the faces of the hundreds of people watching her. She saw pity, yes. But mostly, she saw a strange mix of fear and morbid curiosity. They expected her to break. They expected her to cry. They expected her to be deeply ashamed. She felt a flush of heat rise in her cheeks. But she pushed it down, deep inside herself. She had faced worse things than this. So much worse. This was just another challenge. Julian waited, his smile widening. He was enjoying the spectacle he had created. Well, Petrova? He prompted, his voice laced with impatience. Are you going to dance? Or are you going to stand there looking like a statue? The band is waiting. Your audience is waiting. He snapped his fingers dismissively towards the band leader. The leader, looking unsure, slowly raised his baton, ready to play whatever Julian commanded. Anya took a slow, deep breath. Her heart was beating like a drum against her ribs. But her mind felt surprisingly clear. She looked at Julian again. She truly looked at him. And in that moment, she saw not just a powerful CEO. She saw a man who was deeply insecure, a man who needed to diminish others to feel important, to feel tall. A quiet strength, a power that had been hidden for many years, began to stir inside her. A memory. It was a memory long buried under the weight of daily struggles. A memory of a different life. A memory of a different Anya. It began to surface, like a diver rising from the deep. Then she did something no one expected. She didn't burst into tears. She didn't turn and run away. Instead, a tiny, almost invisible smile touched the corners of her lips. It wasn't a smile of humor. It was a smile of quiet, knowing resolve. The air in the ballroom grew thick with anticipation. It built to an almost unbearable level. Julian's triumphant smile faltered. His brow furrowed slightly. He had not expected this. He had expected shame, tears, maybe even a desperate plea for mercy. But not this quiet, knowing look. Anya lowered her gaze for a moment. Then, slowly and deliberately, she began to walk. She walked towards the empty center of the dance floor. Each step was measured. Each step was steady. The hundreds of eyes followed her every move. The silence was absolute. It was broken only by the soft rustle of expensive fabrics as people shifted, trying to get a better view. Julian watched her, a frown deepening on his face. This was not going as he had planned. There was something in Anya's posture, a dignity that refused to be broken. It disturbed him. As she reached the center, Anya paused. She turned, her eyes sweeping over the vast crowd. She stood there, a lone figure in her simple uniform, under the bright, harsh spotlight. The contrast between her and the lavish surroundings was stark. But something had changed. The pity in the crowd's eyes was slowly being replaced. It was replaced by a bewildered curiosity. What was she going to do? What could she possibly do? Julian's cruel demand had accidentally created a stage for a spectacle that no one, especially Julian Vance himself, was prepared for. The true consequences of his mockery were about to unfold. They would unfold in a way that would shock everyone. The game was set, but Julian had no idea of the real power of the player he had just dared to challenge. His carefully built world, his kingdom of control, was about to be shaken, not by a grand, angry act of rebellion, but by a quiet, powerful revelation. Anya stood perfectly still in the circle of light. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Julian, from his spot near the staircase, watched her with a mixture of confusion and growing impatience. He still expected tears, a breakdown, some form of public shame that would reinforce his power. But Anya merely stood there, breathing deeply. Her shoulders remained straight, her head held high. A subtle shift in her posture, a slight tilt of her chin, gave her an air of quiet defiance. The room held its breath. Then, she began to move. It was barely a movement at first. A subtle flex of her foot, a gentle sway of her hips. It was slow, almost imperceptible. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if listening to an unheard melody. The band leader, still holding his baton aloft, looked nervously at Julian. Julian, annoyed, waved a dismissive hand. "Play something," he hissed. "Anything." The band, startled, launched into a slow, elegant waltz. It was a familiar, classical piece. Anya's eyes opened. They were no longer blank. A flicker of something ancient, something deeply personal, shone within them. She moved with the music, but not exactly to its rhythm. It was as if the waltz was merely a backdrop for a different dance, one that existed only in her mind. Her arms, which had been clasped behind her back, now rose. They moved with a fluidity that shocked everyone. Her hands, calloused and strong, became delicate. They carved patterns in the air. Her first steps were hesitant, almost exploratory. But then, a transformation began. Her movements gained confidence, grace, and an unexpected power. She spun slowly, her simple uniform swirling around her. It was no longer a drab cleaning outfit. It became a flowing garment, accentuating every curve, every extension. Her body seemed to remember something long forgotten. Muscles, once stiff from years of repetitive work, found a new kind of freedom. The crowd watched, spellbound. The chatter had died completely. No one dared to whisper. Julian's frown deepened. This was not the clumsy, embarrassing spectacle he had envisioned. This was something else, something beautiful. Anya's face, once tired and neutral, now showed a myriad of emotions. Joy, sorrow, fierce determination, and a profound sense of release. Each movement told a story. Her feet, clad in sensible, worn work shoes, glided across the polished marble with an impossible lightness. She moved faster now, her body twisting and turning, leaping and landing with an effortless precision that defied her age and her profession. It was not a waltz she was performing. It was a fusion of styles, a dance that seemed to pull from a deep, ancient well of human expression. There were elements of ballet, but with a raw, earthy power. There were hints of folk dance, but refined, elevated. It was a dance that spoke of struggle and triumph, of resilience and hope. It spoke of a life. Her hair, usually tied back severely, had begun to loosen. Strands escaped, framing her face, adding to the wild, passionate beauty of her performance. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her eyes, fixed on some distant, inner horizon, shone with an intense, almost spiritual light. She was no longer Anya Petrova, the janitor. She was an artist. She was a storyteller. She was pure movement, pure emotion. One of the Sterling Innovations board members, an elderly woman named Miss Albright, known for her sharp mind and even sharper tongue, gasped softly. She had a keen eye for talent, having once been a patron of the arts. She recognized the quality of Anya's movements. This was not amateur hour. This was professional. This was mastery. Julian, however, saw only his control slipping. The humiliation he had planned had backfired. Instead of making Anya a joke, he had, through his cruel demand, revealed her hidden depth. He had given her a stage, and she was owning it. His face began to flush with anger. He tried to catch the band leader's eye, to tell him to stop the music, but the band leader, along with everyone else, was captivated by Anya. They played on, their music now seeming to truly connect with her movements, as if she were guiding them. Anya's dance grew more intense. She performed a series of rapid turns, her body a blur of motion. Then, she stopped abruptly, striking a powerful, statuesque pose. Her arms were extended, one leg raised behind her, her body perfectly balanced. It was a moment of breathtaking stillness, followed by another burst of dynamic movement. She moved to the edges of the spotlight, then back to the center, covering the entire space. She seemed to be dancing for the forgotten, for the voiceless, for every person who had ever felt dismissed. Her eyes met Julian's again, briefly. This time, there was no fear, no submission. There was a quiet challenge, a recognition. She saw him, but she was no longer dancing for his forgiveness. She was dancing for herself. She was dancing for her truth. A young assistant, barely out of college, pulled out her phone. She started to record the dance. She was usually afraid to do anything that might displease Julian, but this was too amazing not to capture. Other phones began to emerge, held aloft, recording the unexpected spectacle. A buzz of murmurs began to ripple through the room, no longer nervous, but filled with awe. Who is she? Someone whispered. Where did she learn to do that? She's just the janitor, another replied, disbelief thick in their voice. The music swelled, and Anya moved into a series of grand leaps. Each jump was higher, each landing softer than the last. She seemed to defy gravity. Her body was telling a story of soaring ambition, of reaching for dreams that seemed impossible. The raw emotion on her face was clear for all to see. It was a story of hope, of resilience. Suddenly, her dance took a dramatic turn. Her movements became sharper, more angular. There was an edge of pain, of defiance, mixed with the enduring grace. She bent low, her hands almost touching the floor, then rose slowly, as if pulling herself up from a great burden. She turned her head, her eyes fixed on something unseen, a ghost from her past. The intensity in her movements was almost unbearable. It spoke of deep sorrow, of overcoming immense obstacles. This was not just pretty dancing. This was a narrative woven in motion. It was a testament to the human spirit. It was the story of Anya Petrova, but it was also the story of every underdog, every person overlooked. It was a silent roar against injustice. Julian was no longer smiling. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. He saw the admiration on the faces of his guests, the awe. He saw the phones recording. This was not just a failure to humiliate her. This was a complete and utter reversal. He had given her a platform, and she was turning it into a monument to herself. He clenched his jaw, his grip on the champagne flute, so tight his knuckles were white. He felt a cold dread begin to seep into his bones. His authority, usually so absolute, felt fragile in this moment. The music reached its climax. Anya mirrored it with a breathtaking sequence of turns and drops. She moved across the floor with incredible speed. Then, with a final, powerful leap, She landed softly in the very center of the spotlight. Her arms stretched wide, her head thrown back, her body trembling slightly with exhaustion and emotion. She held the pose for a long, silent moment, completely still, completely magnificent. The last note of the waltz faded into the silence. The ballroom remained utterly still. No one clapped immediately. They were too stunned, too moved. The air was thick with the lingering echo of her movements, the raw power of her performance. Anya slowly lowered her arms. Her chest heaved. Her eyes, still shining, scanned the faces in the crowd. She saw tears in some eyes, open mouths in others, and in many, a look of profound respect. Then, a single, clear voice broke the silence. Miss Albright, the board member, stood up from her chair. She was a woman who rarely showed emotion. She began to clap. Her applause was slow and deliberate at first. Then, she rose to her feet, her applause growing stronger. Others followed. First, a few scattered claps, then a ripple, then a wave. Soon, the entire ballroom erupted in a thunderous standing ovation. The sound was deafening. It was a roar of appreciation, of awe, of respect. Anya stood amidst the deafening applause, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She bowed her head slightly, acknowledging their ovation. She was still in her simple uniform, still the janitor, but now she was also something more. She was a revelation. Julian Vance stood frozen, his champagne flute still in his hand, forgotten. The applause hammered at him, each clap a blow to his carefully constructed image of power. This was not his victory. This was hers, and he had unwittingly provided the stage. The unexpected had happened. The quiet janitor had danced, not for forgiveness, but for freedom. And in doing so, she had exposed the true cruelty of her tormentor. The story of Anya Petrova, the woman who had been mocked, was now beginning to unfold in earnest, and the world was about to discover the full depth of her forgotten past. Anya, still slightly breathless, walked towards her cleaning cart. She felt the warmth of the spotlight on her back as she moved away from the center of the room. The applause continued, a constant wave of sound. She could feel the stares, no longer pitying or curious, but filled with a new kind of wonder. It was overwhelming. She had not expected this. She had simply meant to survive. But something deeper had taken over. A part of herself she thought was long dead had been resurrected on that floor. She reached her cart, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the handle. She wanted to disappear again, to return to her quiet, unseen world. But she knew that was impossible now. The curtain had been pulled back. Her secret was out. And Julian Vance, the man who had forced this revelation, stood glaring at her, his face a mask of furious disbelief. His face was red. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. The victory he had craved had turned into a crushing defeat, and Anya, the small, quiet janitor, had inadvertently become the star of his most important event. Miss Albright, seeing Anya retreat, made her way through the throng of applauding guests. Her eyes were fixed on Anya. She reached her, placing a gentle hand on Anya's arm. "That was extraordinary, my dear," Miss Albright said, her voice softer than many had ever heard it. Her eyes searched Anya's face. "Truly extraordinary. You have a gift." Anya simply nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion. Julian, seeing this interaction, felt a fresh wave of humiliation. Miss Albright was one of the most powerful and respected figures on the board. Her approval was paramount, and she was now openly praising the woman he had just tried to shame. He slammed his champagne flute down on a nearby table, the sharp sound cutting through the applause for a moment. Everyone turned to look at him. His face was twisted with fury. "Get back to work, Petrova," he barked, his voice raw with anger. The night is far from over. But his words had lost their power. The applause continued, defiant now. It was for Anya, not for him. The guests, emboldened by Miss Albright's open support, simply ignored Julian. They continued to clap, some even calling out, "Bravo!" An encore. Miss Albright turned her head slowly, her gaze cold and steady on Julian. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I believe Miss Petrova has done quite enough work for the evening. And frankly, your behavior is an embarrassment to Sterling Innovations." A collective murmur went through the crowd. No one ever spoke to Julian like that, especially not in public. Julian flinched, stung by her words. His face went from red to a sickly white. He looked around, seeing not fear in the eyes of his employees, but judgment. He had overplayed his hand. He had pushed too far. And in doing so, he had revealed not Anya's weakness, but his own. The tables had truly turned. Anya, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, felt a strange sense of vindication. It wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up for herself. It was about reclaiming a part of her soul she thought was lost forever. The quiet janitor had found her voice, not through words, but through the universal language of dance. And the world was finally listening. This was just the beginning. The revelation of Anya's talent was merely the first crack in the carefully constructed facade of Julian Vance's control. The story of what happened next, how this single dance would unravel a web of secrets and power dynamics, was just starting to unfold. The stage was set, not for a simple company gala, but for a dramatic confrontation between dignity and arrogance, between hidden talent and overt power. And no one, especially Julian, was ready for the full impact of Anya's forgotten past. The uproar caused by Anya's dance continued to echo through the ballroom. The applause slowly died down, replaced by excited whispers. Guests were no longer fixated on the gala itself, but on the janitor who had just performed with such breathtaking skill. Julian Vance, still fuming, retreated into a corner, surrounded by his increasingly uncomfortable associates. They shifted their weight, avoiding eye contact, clearly unsure how to handle their boss's public humiliation. Miss Albright, however, remained by Anya's side, a beacon of support. "Miss," Albright said, "Anya, that was truly remarkable. I've never seen anything like it." Anya said, "Thank you, Miss Albright." Her voice was soft, still a little breathless. She looked around, feeling exposed. "Miss Albright said, where did you learn to dance like that?" "It was professional, exquisite." Anya hesitated. The memories were flooding back now, a torrent she had tried to keep locked away for decades. She looked at the polished floor, then back at Miss Albright's kind, curious face. Anya said, "A long time ago. In a different life." She offered a small, sad smile. "My parents were dancers. Ballet. In Eastern Europe. I trained with them from a very young age." A ripple of astonishment spread through the small group gathering around them. A few executives, drawn by Miss Albright's presence, overheard Anya's words. The janitor, a former ballerina? The contrast was too stark, too incredible to believe. Yet they had just witnessed the proof with their own eyes. "Miss Albright said, a professional ballerina? You? Why are you here, then?" Her tone was gentle, filled with genuine curiosity, not judgment. Anya sighed. She looked at her rough, cleaning hands. Her eyes held a distant, haunted look. Anya said, "The war. It changed everything. Our country, our lives. The theaters closed. My parents, they were killed. I fled. I came here to start over, to forget, to survive." She looked up, her gaze meeting Miss Albright's directly. "I buried that part of myself. The dancing. It was too painful to remember, too painful to do." A heavy silence followed her words. The grand ballroom, with its glittering wealth, suddenly felt hollow, its problems trivial. The story of Anya Petrova was not just about a hidden talent. It was about immense loss, resilience, and the sheer will to survive. Julian Vance's cruel game had unwittingly unearthed a tragic history. Julian, seeing the growing circle around Anya and Miss Albright, felt his anger boil over. He couldn't stand being ignored, much less overshadowed by a janitor with a tragic past. He marched towards them, his face a mask of rage. Julian said, "What is this? A pity party, Petrova? Get back to your mop and bucket. We still have a gala to run." Miss Albright turned to him, her eyes flashing with anger. "Miss Albright," said Julian, "enough. Have you no decency? Can you not see the pain this woman has endured?" Julian scoffed. Julian said, "Pain? Everyone has pain, Miss Albright. I have pain, but I don't go performing impromptu ballets in the middle of a corporate event." He turned his gaze on Anya, his voice laced with venom. "Your tragic past doesn't excuse your incompetence, Petrova, or your insubordination." Anya took a step forward, her quiet strength returning. The pain in her eyes hardened into steel. Anya said, "Incompetence? I have never missed a day of work. I have never been late. The coffee spill was an accident, quickly cleaned. You chose to make it a public spectacle." Julian laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Julian said, "And you chose to turn my generosity into a circus act? You think this makes you special? You think this changes anything?" He gestured wildly around the room. "You are still just a janitor, Petrova, a cleaner. This building, these people, they are mine. And you are nothing but dust beneath my feet." His words hung in the air, cruel and biting. The guests winced, some looking away in shame. But Anya did not flinch. She met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. Anya said, "You are wrong, Mr. Vance. I am not dust. I am a person. And this building, it might be yours for now. But talent, spirit, resilience, those things cannot be owned. They cannot be bought. And they certainly cannot be shamed out of existence." Miss Albright placed a hand on Anya's shoulder, a gesture of quiet support. Miss Albright said, "She is absolutely right, Julian. You have misjudged her, and you have disgraced yourself." Julian's face went white. He opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. The tide was turning, and he could feel it. The collective disapproval of the room was palpable. The awe and respect for Anya had grown into something more powerful, a quiet condemnation of Julian's own character. A young man, one of the junior executives who had recorded Anya's dance, stepped forward hesitantly. Young executive said, "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, I think Miss Petrova's dance was inspiring. It showed incredible courage." Julian glared at him. Julian said, "Are you challenging me, Miller? Do you want to find yourself looking for a new job by morning?" The young executive paled, but he held his ground. Young executive said, "No, sir. I'm just saying, it was remarkable." He held up his phone. "I've already sent the video to a few friends. It's going viral." Julian's jaw dropped. Viral? His public humiliation? Broadcast across the internet? The thought sent a jolt of ice through his veins. He had wanted to control the narrative, to dominate. Now, the narrative was controlling him. Anya, watching Julian's face, felt a strange sense of detachment. She had risked everything by dancing, by revealing her past. But in doing so, she had freed herself. The shame was no longer hers to carry. It belonged to the man who tried to impose it. Suddenly, a woman from the back of the crowd, dressed elegantly, stepped forward. She was a prominent arts critic, invited to the gala as a guest. She had a reputation for being sharp and fearless. Arts critics said, "Viral, indeed. I happen to be recording as well. This, Mr. Vance, is a story. A powerful, human story, and your role in it, I assure you, will not be portrayed favorably. She looked at Anya with profound respect. Miss Petrova, what you did tonight was not just a dance. It was a statement, a beautiful, poignant act of defiance. Julian was speechless. The walls of his carefully constructed world were crumbling around him. The power he wielded so casually, the respect he demanded, was slipping away. He looked at the hundreds of faces in the room. They were no longer admiring him. They were looking at Anya. And in their eyes, he saw not only awe for her, but growing disdain for him. Miss Albright said, Julian, I think it's time for you to excuse yourself. For the good of Sterling Innovations, and for your own good. Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Julian looked at Miss Albright, then at the arts critic, then at the sea of faces. He saw his empire, usually so secure, now wavering. The mockery he had intended for Anya had boomeranged with devastating force. He mumbled something inaudible, then turned sharply and pushed his way through the stunned crowd, heading for an exit. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a defeated, angry retreat. A collective sigh of relief seemed to sweep through the ballroom. The tension that had held them captive for so long finally broke. The music started up, again, a softer, more melodic tune. People began to talk, but their conversations were different now. They spoke of Anya, of her talent, of her courage, and they spoke of Julian Vance, his arrogance and his fall. Anya felt Miss Albright squeeze her arm. Miss Albright said, You handled that with incredible dignity, Anya. I am truly impressed. Anya smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her face. Anya said, I just danced. She paused. It felt good to dance again. Like a part of me woke up. The arts critic approached them. Arts critic said, Miss Petrova, I would be honored if you would speak with me further. I believe your story deserves to be told to a much wider audience than this ballroom. Anya looked at Miss Albright, then back at the critic. A new world was opening up, one she had never dared to dream of again. The world of performance, of artistry, of recognition. It was terrifying, yet exhilarating. Anya said, I don't know. Miss Albright said, Anya, this is an opportunity to share your story, your talent, to inspire others. Anya considered it. For so long, her life had been about hiding, about survival. Now, she had a chance to live again, to truly live, to honor her parents' memory and the art they loved. The quiet janitor who had been dismissed and mocked had now become the unlikely star of the night. Her dance had not just saved her job, it had reignited her soul and unexpectedly reshaped the future for everyone present. The story of Anya Petrova was far from over. In fact, it had just truly begun. She had faced her tormentor, exposed his cruelty, and reclaimed her own power. And in doing so, she had set in motion a chain of events that would shake Sterling Innovations to its core. The dramatic turning point had passed, and now the long, intricate process of transformation was underway. And everyone knew, even if they couldn't articulate it, that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The quiet, hidden life she had built was gone, replaced by a future of unknowns. But for the first time in a very long time, Anya felt a flicker of true hope. And that was worth everything. The days following the Sterling Innovations Gala were a whirlwind. Anya, the quiet janitor, found herself at the center of a storm of media attention. The video of her dance, recorded by the young executive and the arts critic, had indeed gone viral. It was shared millions of times. News channels picked up the story, reporting on the janitor ballerina and the CEO who tried to shame her. The contrast was too compelling to ignore. Anya's phone, usually silent, now rang constantly. Requests for interviews poured in. Miss Albright, true to her word, became Anya's unofficial advisor. She helped Anya navigate the sudden fame, ensuring her story was told with dignity and accuracy. The arts critic, Mrs. Davies, wrote a scathing review of Julian Vance's behavior and a glowing tribute to Anya's performance and resilience. Mrs. Davies said, Anya's dance was a testament to the uncrushable human spirit. It was more than entertainment, it was a powerful act of reclamation. Julian Vance, on the other hand, faced a public relations nightmare. His name became synonymous with corporate arrogance and cruelty. Memes ridiculing his outburst flooded social media. Sterling Innovation stock took a hit. Investors, concerned about the brand's image and leadership, began to voice their displeasure. Miss Albright, along with several other influential board members, called an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense. Julian, pale and drawn, tried to defend himself. Julian said, "It was a misunderstanding, a joke that went too far. She was supposed to be embarrassed, not famous." Miss Albright said, "Julian, the optics are catastrophic. Our share price is down 5%. Our major philanthropic partners are threatening to pull out. You have made us a laughingstock." Another board member, Mr. Harrison, a shrewd businessman, spoke up. Mr. Harrison said, "And the janitor, Anya Petrova, is now a global symbol of quiet strength. Her story is resonating with millions. People are calling for your resignation, Julian." Julian slammed his fist on the table. Julian said, "Resign? Over a silly dance? This is ridiculous. I built this company." Miss Albright said, "And you are destroying its reputation. We have no choice. We need to issue a public apology to Miss Petrova, and more importantly, we need a change in leadership." The discussions were heated, but the board's decision was firm. Julian Vance was forced to step down as CEO of Sterling Innovations. It was a swift, brutal fall from grace. The man who reveled in public displays of power was now publicly stripped of it. He left the building a few days later, not in a limousine, but in a nondescript car, avoiding the photographers who still lingered. His face was grim, his usual arrogance replaced by a bitter defeat. Meanwhile, Anya's life was changing in unimaginable ways. Offers poured in, not just for interviews, but for actual performance opportunities. A prestigious ballet company in New York, hearing her story and seeing her talent, offered her a position as a guest artist. They wanted her to teach master classes, to share her unique blend of classical training and raw emotional expression. Anya was overwhelmed. She had spent so long trying to bury her past, and now it was resurfacing, not as pain, but as opportunity. She confided in Miss Albright. Anya said, "I don't know if I can do this. It's been so long. My body, it's not what it used to be. And the memories." Miss Albright said, "Anya, you danced beautifully. You moved everyone in that room. It's not about being perfect. It's about sharing your gift, your story. Your memories are a part of that story. They give your dance depth." The young executive, the one who first recorded Anya, approached her one afternoon. His name was Daniel. He was shy but earnest. Daniel said, "Miss Petrova, I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. And thank you for showing us all what courage looks like." Anya smiled at him. Anya said, "Thank you, Daniel. You helped me, too, by recording it." Daniel said, "I know this might sound strange, but I used to love drawing, creating art. But I put it aside for a real job, a corporate job. Seeing you dance, it made me think, maybe it's not too late for me to try again." Anya said, "It's never too late, Daniel. Never too late to rediscover yourself." His words echoed a profound truth. Anya's dance hadn't just changed her own life. It was a catalyst for change in others. People saw her story and were inspired to confront their own buried dreams, their own quiet struggles. Anya decided to accept the offer from the ballet company. It was a daunting prospect, but for the first time in decades, she felt a powerful sense of purpose beyond mere survival. She began to train again, slowly at first, rediscovering the strength and flexibility her body still held. It was difficult. Her muscles ached. But with every plie and every pirouette, she felt more of her old self return. The pain was still there, the memories of loss, but now they were woven into her movements, adding a poignant beauty to her art. Her first performance with the New York Ballet Company was met with anticipation. The theater was packed. Critics, drawn by her unique story, filled the front rows. Anya walked onto the stage, not in her janitor's uniform, but in a simple, elegant costume that highlighted her grace. She still felt nervous, but a quiet confidence bloomed within her. This was her stage, her art, her story. She danced. She performed a piece specially choreographed for her, reflecting her journey from tragedy to resilience, from hidden pain to rediscovered joy. Her movements were raw, powerful, filled with an emotional depth that younger dancers, no matter how technically perfect, could not replicate. She danced for her parents, for her lost country, for every person who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. She danced for herself. The audience was captivated. By the end of her performance, the entire theater rose to its feet in a standing ovation. Tears streamed down many faces. Anya, standing under the bright lights, felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She was home. After the performance, Miss Albright found her backstage. "Miss," Albright said, "Anya, you were magnificent. Absolutely magnificent." Anya said, "It felt right, like breathing again." "Miss," Albright said, "it was more than right. You've inspired so many, including myself. I've decided to retire from the board next year and pursue my own long-postponed dream, writing a book." Anya smiled. Her dance had started a ripple effect, spreading courage and hope. The story of Anya Petrova became a powerful lesson. It showed that true strength often resides in the most unexpected places. It proved that dignity and talent could not be extinguished by cruelty or arrogance. And it highlighted the profound impact one person's courage could have on the world. Julian Vance's attempt to publicly shame a janitor had inadvertently created a legend. His fall served as a cautionary tale, while Anya's rise was an enduring testament to the human spirit's ability to transcend adversity and find beauty even in the deepest scars. Her journey had come full circle, from the silenced whisper to the roaring ovation, proving that some voices, no matter how quiet, are simply too powerful to be ignored. Her life, once a shadow, now shone brightly, illuminating the path for others to find their own hidden light. The world had underestimated Anya Petrova, but now, the world was watching her dance. And for the first time in a very long time, Anya felt truly, completely free. Her story was a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of profound adversity, the human spirit can find its rhythm, its strength, and ultimately, its freedom. The dance she performed that night at the Sterling Innovations Gala was not just a spectacle of defiance. It was the first step on a new path, a path of healing, purpose, and profound impact. And the impact would continue to spread far and wide, touching lives in ways she never could have imagined. Her quiet act had sparked a revolution of the heart. Anya's story, once a quiet whisper of resilience, had now become a roaring symphony of triumph. The janitor ballerina phenomenon resonated far beyond the glittering ballroom where it began. It became a powerful symbol, not just of unexpected talent, but of the universal struggle to maintain dignity in the face of degradation. Her performances continued to captivate audiences, each movement speaking volumes about her past, her strength, and her unwavering spirit. She proved that the most profound beauty can emerge from the ashes of adversity, and that true grace is found not in perfection, but in perseverance. Julian Vance, once the untouchable titan of industry, faded into obscurity. His attempts to rebuild his reputation were met with cold indifference. The public had seen his true character, laid bare by his own cruelty. His name became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that power without empathy is fragile and ultimately destructive. Sterling Innovations, under new leadership, worked hard to restore its image, emphasizing corporate responsibility and respect for all employees. They even created a foundation in Anya's honor, funding arts programs for underprivileged youth, a direct and humbling acknowledgement of the janitor they once dismissed. Anya, however, never sought revenge or gloated over Julian's downfall. Her focus remained on her art, on sharing her gift, and on inspiring others. She traveled the world, performing and teaching, her story touching countless lives. Her master classes were always full, not just with aspiring dancers, but with people from all walks of life who simply wanted to hear her speak, to feel the silent power of her presence. She spoke about the importance of holding on to one's inner light, even when the world tries to dim it. She often shared a simple, profound message. Anya said, "Life will try to break you. It will try to make you forget who you are, what you love. But within you, there is an unbreakable spirit, a rhythm that is uniquely yours. Never stop listening to that rhythm. Never stop dancing your own dance." Her words resonated deeply with everyone who heard them. They were not just about dance. They were about life. They were about finding courage in vulnerability and beauty in scars. Her journey had proven that true forgiveness often lies not in absolving others, but in reclaiming one's own power, in rising above the attempts to diminish you. The forgiveness Julian had offered was hollow, a tool for control. The forgiveness Anya found was within herself, a liberation that allowed her to live fully, without bitterness. One evening, after a particularly moving performance in a historic European opera house, Anya stood backstage, the applause still ringing in her ears. She felt a profound sense of peace. The ghost of her past, the pain of her loss, still lingered. But now, they were not shackles. They were woven into the tapestry of her strength, adding depth and authenticity to her art. Miss Albright, who had traveled to see the performance, embraced her. Miss Albright said, "You have come so far, Anya. Your parents would be so proud." Anya said, "I hope so. I hope they are watching." Her eyes misted slightly. "I finally feel like myself again. More than myself, even." The young executive, Daniel, was also there. He had since left Sterling Innovations and was pursuing a career as an illustrator. His artwork, vibrant and expressive, was beginning to gain recognition. Daniel said, "Miss Petrova, your story was the push I needed, the courage to leave the safe path and follow my own heart." "Thank you," Anya said. "You found your own rhythm, Daniel. That's all that matters." Anya's story wasn't just about a janitor who could dance. It was about the power of human dignity, the quiet strength found in everyday people, and the profound ripple effect of one act of courage. It taught the world that empathy and respect are far more valuable than wealth or status, and that true power lies not in diminishing others, but in uplifting them. It also taught a crucial lesson about judging others based on their perceived station in life. The janitor, the silent, unassuming cleaner, held within her a world of talent and a history of resilience that no one, especially not her arrogant CEO, could have ever imagined. She was a testament to the fact that every person carries a unique story, a hidden light, waiting for the right moment to shine. Her journey also highlighted the often invisible struggles of those who perform essential, yet overlooked, jobs. Anya represented all those who work tirelessly behind the scenes, whose contributions are often taken for granted. Her dance became their anthem, a silent but powerful declaration of their worth and humanity. The Sterling Innovations Gala had been a crucible, a trial by fire. Julian Vance had intended to burn Anya with shame, but instead, he had unknowingly forged her into a beacon of hope. His act of mockery had backfired spectacularly, revealing his own deep flaws and unleashing Anya's long-dormant brilliance upon the world. The consequences he had set in motion were far greater than he could have ever conceived. He learned, perhaps too late, that true power is not found in dominating others, but in respecting the inherent dignity of every human being. Anya's legacy would not just be her breathtaking performances, but the countless lives she inspired. She taught us to look beyond the surface, to never underestimate the quiet strength of others, and to always believe in the power of our own unique dance. Her life became a living testament to the fact that even after profound loss and years of hiding, it is always possible to find your way back to your true self, to reclaim your joy, and to share your light with the world. So, what does Anya's story mean for us? It's a reminder that everyone you meet carries a hidden world within them, a world of experiences, talents, and dreams that might surprise you. It urges us to practice kindness, to look beyond titles and uniforms, and to always recognize the inherent worth in every individual. We are all more than our jobs, more than our circumstances. We are complex, beautiful, and capable of extraordinary things. This story of Anya Petrova reminds us to never let anyone else define your worth. To hold on to your passions, no matter how distant they seem, and to find the courage, when tested, to dance your own authentic dance, not for anyone else's forgiveness, but for your own freedom and joy. If Anya's incredible journey moved you, if it sparked a flicker of courage in your own heart, please show your support. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message of resilience, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and challenge the way we see the world. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to life and build a community that values empathy and human connection above all else. Now, we want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell us, have you ever been underestimated or dismissed? What hidden talent or passion do you hold on to, even if you don't share it often? Or perhaps, what is a moment where you saw someone rise above expectations, just like Anya? Share your thoughts and stories. Let's build a space where every voice is heard and every hidden dance is celebrated.